China has risen 18% over the same period in 2009. So there's still some very, very big imbalances. Now, we're going to talk about the broad issues here on this panel, and I think some of the much smaller issues as well, hopefully. What I'm going to do is ask the guests to make an opening presentation of their main thoughts. Then we'll follow that up with a few questions, but I'd like you to start thinking of questions as they're speaking so we can open this up to the floor very, very early on. So with that, I'll hand over to Minister Mengistu to give her opening remarks, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Great pleasure for me to be here in the city of Chongqing. I'd also like to take this opportunity for those who are celebrating the Eid, to wish you all Minal Aidin wal Faizin and good wishes for the coming year. I'd like to talk about two main things, basically. The question posed to us is with regard to sustainability of world trade growth, the role of emerging economies, and the changing pattern of competition. On the first issue of the sustainability of world trade growth, I think we all breathed a sigh of relief this year as we see the world recovering and trade and investment being very much a source of this growth and recovery. I think if you recall, just this time last year or early last year, we were all lamenting the fact that this may be the next Great Depression and there will be a rise of protectionism. Thankfully, that didn't happen. And what we have had instead is quite a quick rebound and what we call a costless stimulus as compared to the fiscal stimulus coming from trade and investment growth. After contracting for around 10% in 2009, for 2010, the projection is that trade growth will be around 10% or more. Currently, world trade growth is growing at 25%. And in Asia, it's growing at 35%. Africa and Middle East also at 35%, driven by demand in Asia and increasing commodity prices. Indonesia itself, first semester, our exports are growing at 23%. But if you think about it, it sounds great, but it's really a rebound story. And even if you grew at 20%, you're basically more or less back to 2008. That's the way I think we should see it. And so really the big question is 2010 and beyond. I think the story of the year, or the story of post-crisis, and as we saw what happened during the crisis, is that really the new market opportunities are in the emerging economies, especially in Asia. And Asian developing countries, even during the crisis in 2009, grew at 6.6% and are expected to grow between 8 to 10% in the next 2 years, with China and India leading the growth at 8 to 10%. But let's not forget Southeast Asia. I think we always feel that there's so much dominance on China and India. Don't forget Southeast Asia, ASEAN countries, 10 countries. Indonesia is the largest country there. Indonesia grew at 4.5% last year during the crisis. This year we're all set to grow at 5.8 to 6%. Next year at 6.3%. For your information, the US exports to China as much as they export to the whole of ASEAN. So in a way, we are the third pole in this East Asia world. Now, I just wanted to try to answer the question posed in this session regarding how sustainable is the export growth or trade growth in the next forthcoming years and in the near future. Let me just pick on two issues. One is diversification of markets and then diversification of products. In the sense of diversification of markets, what is the big story is the South-South trade, including the story of the emerging economies. South-South trade since 1990 grew almost 2 times more than world trade. And developing countries trade with each other. 39% of their trade is with developing countries. For China, it's 25%, with expectation that it will be 50% by 2020 and 60% by 2027. Indonesia trades about 50% with other developing countries, mainly in East Asia. And why has this happened, I think, is the more interesting question. I think it's been driven by economic integration, which is driven by open trade and investment policies. which is driven by our WTO commitments since 1995, and say in the case of China because of their accession to the WTO. And I think in the crisis period, the G20 kind of surveillance mechanism did help to stem off calls for protectionism. And unilateral reform agendas as we compete with each other for investment, and finally regional trade agreements. That's kind of what my menu of factors. And just to say that, so what next? What next means that for me, for us, for Indonesia, the multilateral trading system, concluding Doha, is still very, very key in terms of ensuring continued open and trade investment environment, continued South-South trade. I think that 160 billion that Vice Minister Yi mentioned yesterday, a large part of that is South-South trade. And DDA, middle initial is development. In the development agenda of the round, removing export distortions in agriculture, removing peak tariffs, and all that are very important. But this must be complemented by a comprehensive aid for trade package and trade facilitation and capacity building agenda, such as developed by ITC and others. I may have run out of my, have I got a few more minutes? If I have a few more minutes, my second point was about diversification of products. I think what we have seen, especially in East Asia, is this changing pattern where, you know, in the maybe 10, 15 years ago, we used to talk about the flying geese pattern, where you shift from one country to another as looking for lower costs of production, mainly driven by labor costs. But now you see a totally different East Asia, intra-East Asia trade pattern, which used to be dominated by trade in intermediate goods and services to export to third markets outside of East Asia, mainly developed country markets. But that is changing totally. It's a much more complex localization and specialization pattern, much as what the previous session talked about. It's no longer just about lower labor costs. It's about the component of services and value added that you can add into it, and supporting industries, the availability of supporting industries. I think the reality that a lot of trade is done firm to firm rather than country by country is something that is not lost upon us, because we see it happening in our region. According to the estimation, 1/3 of world trade is done firm to firm. So this means firm to firm, not just country to country, is what we as policymakers need to focus on. How to reduce trade transactions costs, how to ensure quality business environment, marketing support institutions such as enforceability of contracts. And I think this is a call again for multilateralism versus regional trade agreements. We get a lot of complaints from our exporters. I have to deal with 10 rules of origin in all the 10+1 ASEAN +1 agreement. Aren't you going to do something about it? This would be solved under a multilateral trading system where it's all MFN. But good design RTAs where you harmonize rules of origin is also another answer, which is something we are doing also in East Asia. And obviously logistics and infrastructure, including ICT infrastructure, is a very much key for there to be firm to firm, including integrating SMEs and including getting you into the services supply chain, I think is a very important component. And I think it's not lost upon a country like Indonesia, a large country like Indonesia, that it's cheaper to import oranges from China than it is to take oranges from Kalimantan, which is part of Indonesia. And I'm sure Chongqing versus coastal China has similar issues as well. Just 1 minute on two last points, because I think this is important. When we look at emerging economies and the growth of East Asia trade, there are two very important factors on top of the regional production network and changes and dynamics of it that is very important. One is that what we are seeing is that it's increasingly consumption driven, because it's no longer we are producing here and then exporting out. We are selling to each other more consumer goods, and that's driven by increased purchasing power in China, in India, in Indonesia. China's middle class is estimated at 290 million. India is probably over 100 million. In the latest census of Indonesia, 25 million of our 237 million people are now classified as middle class. The last important factor is demographics. China is going towards the aging population, whereas India, Southeast Asia, is